decades, you've turned your focus from love to intelligence. Was age a reason for this change, as if like love is the subject of young people and then wisdom is for old people? Or is it that you just said everything you had to say about love and there was nothing more to say?
Neither. um, my most recent book on love just came out. It's published with Cambridge University Press. It's called The New Psychology of Love, second edition. It was published, I think, in 2020, maybe 2019. So it's pretty recent. And my paper in there with some collaborators is on jealousy and envy. So I also had I'm a collaborator on a paper that was just published uh, a couple months ago, which is a cross-cultural validation of the triangular theory in 25 different countries around the world. So it's very, can you hear me? It's
Yes.
very extensive. The validations were done in cultures all over the globe, and the theory was found to be valid in every country in which the scale was used. So it's a real major study, and it's published in the Journal of Sex Research. So that is recent. If you'd like, I can send it to you. Do you want me to send you the paper if I can find it? It just came out.
Yes, of course. Use that for.
Send me an email, uh, and I will send you the paper. But that is very recent. It's a cross-cultural validation of the theory, and it just was published a few months ago.
Yes.
Two questions.
We're getting some interference here.
Might
Yes.
be from my side. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
And if at any point I'm breaking up out, like let me know so that I can fix the problem. Someone
Yeah,
said that.
some kind of funny noise in the background every once in a while, but we'll manage.
Sorry, I'm at the office. Someone said that your meditation about your theory.
There is so much noise coming from your side that I can no longer hear you. There's some kind of interference. Stopped. Okay. Sorry.
I can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear?
Okay.
Mr. Malik Mohammed, could you add me again to the call? Can I hang up and you add me again? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes. Sorry.
It's okay. Okay.
No.
No.
Yeah.
That's okay.
A second.
Can you hear me?
No, no, no,
Okay. Can you hear me now?
no.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. Um, I'm gonna ask my second question. I'm sorry, I didn't anticipate this problem. Um, some have said that in your modification of the theory of love, you've just expanded it, and you didn't change the basis that was being criticized in your theory. For example, one of the criticism has been about your theory has been that it's not a comprehensive theory of love, but at best it can be a definition of an approach of love or the models of relationship and interpersonal relationship. And some have said that your scale about love is, in practice, it's a determination of the relationship um, model of people and not the kind of love that they have. What's your answer to these criticisms?
Well, no matter what you do, you get criticized. So that's nothing new. My answer is that, first of all, that the theory of love as a story is not a replacement for the triangular theory. It's an augmentation, it's an addition. And in my paper on the duplex theory of love, which appeared in the first edition of the New Psychology of Love, I explain. I have it also. I explain it in a very recent paper that just came out in a book on positive psychology. It just came out less than a month ago, a couple of weeks ago. I could send you that. I think you're using some outdated sources. So I have a new paper that just came out that I think would explain it. Again, if you send, I'm going to write a note for what to send you. I'm going to send you the cross-cultural validation, and I'm going to send you the paper on love that just came out. Um, because I think you're using old stuff. But anyway, so the theory of love as a story is an augmentation in addition to the triangular theory. The idea is that you have these triangles and the stories are how you came to the triangles. In terms of whether it's a complete theory, the answer to that is simple. No, no theory is complete. And no theory is correct. There are no correct theories, there are no complete theories. They're all approximations. So if someone said it was a complete theory, I would worry about them because, no theory is, the theory of relativity isn't complete. Nothing's complete. But we construct validated the theory, the triangular theory, and the theory of love as a story. They were both published. So those journals thought one was published in the European Journal of Social Psychology, the other in the European Journal of Personality. In both theories survived the construct validation. As I said, we just did a cross-cultural validation of the triangular theory in 25 cultures. It worked in every one. So it's easy for anyone to write a paper saying, this theory sucks, because anyone could write that. I mean, I could do that for any theory. It's harder to come up with one that works in 25 countries. So if someone comes up with a theory that works in 26 countries, well, then, they'll have one more. But theories are always a work in progress. They're never over. And so, maybe a younger person will come up with a more comprehensive theory or a better theory. I hope so. That would be good.
Yes, thank you. Uh, سال بعدی.
But I'll send you those two papers so you have something more up to date, because those were both published within the last few months.
Thank you. Next question.
For a scale about the stories of love, how does it differ? How is it different from John Gottman's theory and scale about stability of marriage? What's the difference and the similarity between these two ideas?
Well, I really, you know, hopefully they're somewhat similar because we're all talking about the same phenomenon. I first published about love being a story in the 1980s. That's when I first published it. And the idea is that this isn't just about marriage. It's that from the time right after you're born, you start to form stories based on your parents' TV, movies, books, friends. You see different kinds of love stories. Uh, like Gabriel Garcia Marquez wrote a book, Love in the Time of Cholera, which had all these different kinds of stories of love. The idea of love stories is similar to everybody. I mean, we learn about love through stories. There's nothing new about that. None of my theories are new. They're just sort of taking what's there and trying to formalize it. What I tried to do is to say, what are common kinds of stories that people have and which ones work? And what we found is that people tend to be happier, more satisfied in relationships when their profile of stories match, which makes sense. In other words, there's no right or wrong story. That what you're looking for in terms of a story of love, what I'm looking for and my partner is looking for are similar. And so you can take the love story scale and see whether what you're looking for matches what someone else is looking for. So if you're looking for a fairy tale, sort of a prince and a princess, and your partner is looking for a business deal, how much money are you bringing, and how big is your car, and what's your house look like? If one person wants a fairy tale and the other wants a business deal, that's not going to work. And so what the theory does is formalize that. It says, like, we're going to ask you some questions in the questionnaire, and we're going to ask your partner some questionnaires. And if you have different stories, if one of you has a fairy tale and the other has a business, or if one of you has a fairy tale and the other has a horror story, it's probably not going to work. And that's what we found. Similarly, with the triangular theory, we found that the best predictors are how much of each component you have, intimacy, passion, and commitment, but also how well you and your partner match. In other words, if one of you wants commitment and the other doesn't want commitment, I don't want to get married to anybody, that's not going to work, right? Or if one of you wants passion, like, let's go to bed, and the other, I'm not going to bed with you, are you kidding? That's not going to work either. So it's really about match. And how is it different from other theories? I think they all overlap, and they should, because they're all talking about the same thing. But this theory is not just about marriage, it's about your whole life. And it doesn't only apply to your romantic partner. I have 5 kids, and I love them passionately, and I have intimacy and commitment to them, but it's different in kind from what I have, say, with my wife or whatever. So you can have these components in different kinds of love relationships. And if you have the same kind of love relationship with your kids, you're really in trouble. Then you better go to a psychologist pretty fast.
Yes, thank you. Next.
Um, am I, is my voice clear now?
Yeah. You know what? We probably can't talk about it, but sometime I'd love to hear about what it's like living in Iran these days. Probably you can't talk about that, but I would love to hear about it. I have
I
Iranian colleagues. Some of my best colleagues are Iranian. So I sort of hear about Iran all the time.
I'm actually a journalist in the field of policy and diplomacy. So after this, my time is yours. I can talk about it all you want.
Okay. All right. Well, tell me something about it because I'd love to hear it. But I know you have some more questions to ask.
Um, uh, One of the other criticism, which is of course one of the very known challenges in all times about love, is that they say that your theory of love, the psychoanalytic theories, considers love an unconscious, deterministic idea based on the models shaped in childhood, and cognition has no role to play in it. While today, cognitive psychologists believe that before commitment, or before the experience of emotion and passion, there's cognition happening. What would you say to that criticism?
I would say they don't understand the theory very well. I just graded a student who wrote an essay for a final exam I gave, and I graded his essay on love, and I gave him a 72, which is a C minus. And I said, "You don't really understand the theory, and it sounds like that person might get a 69." I never said it's all unconscious or it's not cognitive. In fact, I say repeatedly that the commitment component is cognitive. That's what I say. So it's really funny. I think that what we might have to do is like get a paddle and hit that person to teach them a lesson. Um, what I discuss in both theories is that you have the ability to change. So I even explicitly discuss in my writing, which this person obviously didn't read, that you can change stories, but it's hard. And the reason it's hard is it's like I'm 71 and I'm still biting my nails. I mean, this is pathetic. When you start forming ways of living when you're young, it's not that you can't change them. I never said that. It's that it's hard. Uh, People generally are not well aware of their stories, but they certainly can be made aware of them. That's why I have that love scale. I have the love story scale so that people can become aware of it. And to some extent, people are aware. It's not totally unconscious. I mean, that's crap. You, if you're kind of into pornography, you sort of know you have a pornography story. If you're into hurting your partner, you may not call it a horror or terror story, but you know that's what you do. If you're looking for a business deal, you know you're looking for a business deal. You know you're looking for the house and the money and the societal prestige and how much stock do you have. You know that. So so that's just not true. It's not totally unconscious. It's not that you can't change it. It's that if you form a pattern from early in your life, change is hard to achieve, but it's not impossible. The interesting thing about the stories that I have always felt is that although some of the stories are predictive of failure, some of them just don't work well. And you can see why, like a horror story is not going to work well, or a pornography story is not going to work. None of them in itself predicted success, which was a total surprise to me. In other words, just having a story, there's no story that comes anywhere close to guaranteeing success. It's what you do with it and the extent to which it matches your partner. But just having a travel story, which is a pretty good story, or a gardening story, that in itself doesn't guarantee you a good outcome. You know, It's that you have, no matter what your story, you have to work at it. You have to have a partner who wants to work at it. And you have to believe that it's worth working at. You know what I mean?
Yes. Next.
Um, we had an interview with Dr. David Boss, and your theory came up, and he said he has a lot of respect for you, but he has this disagreement with your theory that maybe not a disagreement, just like this criticism, that it's just descriptive. It doesn't explain the function of the three components of it. And some also believe that it's hard to distinguish between the three different components of your theory and like set them apart because our psyche is integrated. So, yeah, what's your answer to that?
Yeah. So when I came up with the triangular theory, I think it's descriptive too. And that's why I came up with the theory of love as a story, because I always tried to figure out what was it that led people to have the different kinds of triangles. Now, one could say, well, all right, the triangles are caused by the stories, and what are the stories caused by? And then I could say they're caused by your personal experiences interacting with your personality. And they could say, what is your personality caused by? I mean, it can keep going back. Um, so to some extent, yeah, I think the triangle is descriptive. The stories help you understand how you came to the particular triangle. In terms of distinguishing the components, I think most people can tell that, if you go out on a date, I don't know how it works in Iran, but here, you usually can tell the difference between someone who's trying to get you to bed and someone who really wants to talk to you and get to know you. In other words, the passion component and the intimacy component, they're really different. You can have a really good girlfriend, but, she's someone you talk to. You talk about your problems. You need advice. They'll help you if you need their help, but that doesn't mean you feel like romantic about them. I have a lot of friends who I'm not passionate about, who I can talk to. Um, so intimacy is pretty different from passion. There's some, and you can tell when a person is only interested in your body. I mean, that hasn't happened to me, but there's some girls, say, or maybe boys, Brad Pitt, um, who, people become really passionate about them. They don't really want to talk to them. Like, let's not waste our time talking. There's the hotel. I mean, maybe we could get a room on with a really great view. So I think passion and intimacy are pretty different. And if the person who talked to you about that said if they can't distinguish passion and intimacy, maybe they need to find a prettier girl or a more handsome guy or something. Or maybe they need to find someone they can talk to. I don't know. I think they're pretty different. In terms of commitment, I don't think it's so hard to distinguish commitment from intimacy and passion. You just, is this someone you want to stay with forever? That's all. Commitment, you may not even have intimacy or passion. You may be totally committed to someone because you have kids, because you feel like you have a religious obligation, because you feel like you have a legal obligation, because you've lived with them for 30 years, and even though the intimacy and passion are gone, you're committed to carrying this through. You could feel intimacy and passion and have no commitment at all. Like, you're moving to you're moving to California to go to law school. I'm staying here in New York. We can't become committed because we're going to be 3,000 miles away from each other. But you still could have intimacy and passion. So I don't think it's so hard to distinguish commitment from intimacy. Commitment is a cognitive thing. contrary to what that person said, that there's no cognition in the theory. It's a decision. And you can make that decision with or without intimacy or passion. And that's what the theory says. So I think there are criticisms of the theory, but I don't think that's a fair one. If that person can't tell the difference between intimacy, passion, and commitment, I think that's their problem. I don't think it's a problem with the theory.
Yes, thank you. سوال بعدی رو بپرس با وجود اینکه احتمالاً میزنیم.
Another criticism that's been mentioned, and this will be our last question in this topic. Another criticism that's been mentioned is that your theory doesn't really, it kind of ignores the recent and neurological findings about the function of brain and the experience of love. That in some studies, the place of ephemeral love is in the limbic system. And the more stable kind of love is in the higher levels of the brain. Is there any place in your theory for these kinds of findings and studies?
Yeah, well, there are some people, and that's always been the case, who are reductionistic, that if you can't find the place in the brain, then it's at best incomplete and at worst useless. And I don't know. I think that my view is that there is room for theories and methods of all kinds, that there's no one correct kind of theory or kind of method or kind of empirical study. In the end, one would hope in the future, there'll be an integration of what we find at the different levels, like at the cognitive and the neuropsychological level or the social and neuropsychological level. And so eventually I could imagine someone doing a study. It won't be me because I don't have the background. And at this point, I'm probably too old to get the background. I mean, I can hardly see you and I can hardly hear, and it's very hard for me to get the words right. And then I have my wheelchair. You see, this looks like a desk chair, but I'm only kidding. Okay. So, someone someday will probably integrate these, but in the meantime, I think it would be great instead of, I'm gonna give you a little side lecture in a minute. And what they should do is, instead of like, wow, this is what's wrong with this theory, why don't they try to figure out how to integrate them? I think that would be a more constructive way of doing things. But I think there's room for all kinds of things. If you want to, in the morning, if you want the psychology of turning on your car, you could probably figure out some area in the brain, but in the end, you just have to, turn the key or push a button. And looking for the brain area might not be the most productive way. Or if you try to look at, I think I'd like to go out for a walk. Probably it's happening somewhere in your brain, but that may not be the most effective level of study for why someone wants to go out for the walk. Is it because some part of your brain is like, I have to go out for a walk? It may be that you like some fresh air, or it may be that you need some exercise, and you could find an area of the brain where it's happening, but that's correlate. It's not causal, it's correlational. And what's happened is some people who are into neuropsychological research are making a claim that isn't really justified, and that is that it must be causal. What we can do now is we can come up with brain correlates of what people do. But it's sort of like the whole IQ testing business, where people started saying IQ is causal rather than just correlational. The point they wanted to make, that's the side lecture, it's just my opinion, is that when I was young, I was really excited about psychology. I really was. Today, it's a little harder for me. And I think one of the problems is I don't know about Iran. I wish I knew more about it, but I don't know much about it. But here, we choose students for universities and for high tracks in schools, for gifted programs and for graduate programs on the basis of their grades and their test scores. And what I think has happened is by putting so much emphasis, this is a side lecture, it's not relevant to your question. By putting so much emphasis on people's ability to memorize stuff and analyze, we end up with people going into the field who they're big critics. They don't have one friggin' idea in their head, but they're very quick to criticize everyone else. And it can become parasitic. It's like it used to be when I started that to build a career in psychology, you actually had to come up with ideas. And you were judged by whether you had some creative ideas to offer. None of them were perfect. If you look at Freud and Piaget, Skinner, you could criticize them for hours. They're full of holes. They have more holes than Swiss cheese, but they were great because they were leaders in their field. They saw things that other people hadn't seen, even though their theories were flawed. So now you get a bunch of people who come along, as happens in always. Well, it's just wrong. It's wrong. It's not so good. And that's kind of easy to do. It's the reason I say it's parasitic is that the more well-known the person is, the more it advances your career. It's like you latch on like a parasite, and you hope that by criticizing someone who is more eminent than you, somehow you will become eminent. I brought down Freud, or I brought down Piaget. Screw that. Anyone can do that. If you don't like Freud or Piaget, come up with a better idea. Don't spend your whole damn career saying what's wrong with everyone else. Let these people who, this is wrong, let them come up with a better idea. And the way science works is that old ideas are not replaced by critiques, they're replaced by better ideas. So, it would be great if instead of spending their time picking, they said, I think this is wrong with this theory. I'm going to come up with a better one. And I would welcome that because my theories won't last forever. No one's will. If Freud's and Piaget and Skinner don't last forever, who is? Nobody. But what makes psychologists or scientists great is not that they're right, but the heuristic value of what they do. It's that they provide the basis for the next generation of people to criticize them, but hopefully also come up with better ideas. And that's what seems to be missing. But okay, that's my side lecture.
Excellent. Thank you. A short question about intelligence. Next.
We're going to go to the topic of intelligence now, the topic of your recent work. We know that you're one of the people who disagrees the most with the standardized tests of intelligence equation. You have a theory about the three kinds of intelligence, and that the intelligence is much more than what these tests consider. In your recent book, Adaptive Intelligence, you also have a very detailed explanation about a couple of classic theories about intelligence, like the general intelligence theory of Spearman, the theory of Gombrey-Thompson, Thorsten, Guilford, Gardner, and other theories. And you've said that adaptive intelligence is an assessment or a review about the concept of intelligence. Why is it that this theory, your theory, is a better explanation of intelligence than the other ones?
Well, I don't know if it's better. I hope it's better. It's different. Because I'm not going to start picking at them now, then I'll be doing the same thing these other people did. So here's what I see as the issue. Do you have kids? Do you have children?
He does, I don't.
All right.
My college.
So if if the world we leave behind for our kids and our grandkids and their kids is really crap, it's too hot, there's a scarcity of water, there's awful weather, we're losing land mass to the oceans, it's poisoned, it's got one pandemic after another. It's violent. It's got weapons of mass destruction. It's got really super rich people and a few super rich people and all these very poor people. Does it really matter what your IQ is? My argument is we're destroying the world for humans and for other species. And this is not just my opinion. We are. Look at the pandemic. All these people with the high IQs in government. To get into a high government post, you probably have a pretty good IQ. You have to be smart in a traditional sense, somewhat smart. In the United States, a lot of our politicians went to very prestigious schools, Harvard and Yale and Princeton. Their IQ smart. And then they're making a total mess. I mean, they're really mess. Like when Trump was president, well, he went to the University of Pennsylvania, had some Ivy League graduates, and people were getting COVID-19 left and right and dying of it. What good were their IQs exactly? What good is your IQ? Herman Cain was CEO of a major company, I think, some pizza company. He was a presidential candidate. So he goes to a Trump rally. He's not wearing a mask. He's not socially distancing. He gets COVID-19 and he dies. So maybe he had an IQ of 135. I don't know. What good was his IQ exactly? He's dead. Sperm counts at least in the West, I don't know about in Iran, maybe you're doing better, have decreased 50% since the 1980s. Do you know what that means? That means that it's no surprise that people in this country are having much more trouble conceiving kids because the men's sperm counts are down 50%. So if eventually we become like a science fiction novel where couples can't conceive and we eradicate ourselves because of the chemicals in the environment, and some civilization comes from outer space and lands on Earth, do you think they're gonna say, wow, were they smart? They were the first species in the history of the planet to kill themselves off, but they had high IQs. So the point I'm trying to make is in the 20th century, IQs went up 30 points. 30 points, that's 2 standard deviations. I guess you're not a psychologist, but that's a lot. That's the difference between someone being average and someone being on the border of gifted, or someone being average and someone being on the border of intellectually, as we say, challenged. 30 points is huge. That's what happened in the 20th century. The only reason that the average IQ stayed at 100 is because the test publishers renormed the tests to keep the average at 100. So 30 points of IQ. And look at the mess we're making. I mean, India right now is going through this, like, what is it, 400, 500,000 cases a day? And that's a gross underestimate. Everyone knows that's grossly underestimated the number of cases. Now, I bet they have some high IQ people in charge of the government. But what did those high IQ people do? They said, hey, go to political rallies. Don't worry about social distancing and masks. Go to religious festivals. Do this, do that. It's not about your IQ. we have in our country, I don't know about around, but we have people who have billions of dollars. They don't know what to do with their friggin' money. I just saw a picture of Bill and Melinda Gates's house. I mean, like, holy crap, it's like enormous. And then we have people who are living on the streets. Now, is that the sign of an intelligent society? I mean, like, does that make any sense that people are dying and getting sick and living on the street and they have kids they can't take care of? And other people don't know what to do with their money. They have so many billions. Is that smart? So, what I'm saying in the book is that this whole enterprise of intelligence is totally frigged up. It's based on some work that people like Binet, Alfred Binet did, and he published his first book in 1905 to predict kids' performance in school and to say which of the kids would have trouble learning in a regular classroom and which could make it in a regular classroom. For that it was okay, but it's been generalized. And so we're picking the wrong people to be leaders. My personal view is every society screws up in its own way. Some pick people on the basis of their IQs, some do it on the basis of their wealth, some do it on the basis of their religion, some do it on the basis of their height, some do it on the basis of their social class, their skin color. What we should be doing is looking for people who will make the world a better place, who are seriously, passionately committed to improving the world. Not people who are rich, not people who are suck-ups, not people who are white, not people who are Protestant, not people who are male, just the people who are going to make the world a better place. So to me, making the world a better place is what adaptive intelligence is about. And we can't afford to screw around anymore because it's been raining here for the past week. The weather is getting worse and worse. And, with global climate change, when all that ice melts, we're screwed. And our kids are screwed and our grandkids are screwed. And some people don't even want to have kids anymore because of the kind of world we're creating. And we thought about it too. I never meant to have 5 kids. I mean, this is what I believe intelligence is about. Yeah. So are they wrong? I don't know if they're wrong. All I'm saying is that I think we got to do a hell of a lot better than having people do trivial problems on trivial tests for skills that may get them into a good university and so they know how to solve a trigonometry problem. That's not going to save the world at this point. That's my view.
Yes. And next.
Thank you. Do you just in general disagree all across the board with the concept of IQ? You've written in an article that we can't disagree with the general factor of intelligence. And you've said somewhere else that I am not disagreeing that IQ is predictive of a lot of things. I'm not one of the extreme left-wingers who say that IQ tells you absolutely nothing. But it seems like there's not much disagreement with the traditional theories of intelligence.
Yeah, I don't think, well, first of all, data are data. And the data are that IQ predicts a lot of things. I actually wrote a proposal to a journal editor that I should write a 1-sentence paper. And the paper would say that tests of cognitive ability predict behavior in the real world that is based on cognitive ability. And that would be the end of the literature showing that IQ correlates with yet something else. IQ is a measure of cognitive abilities, and it makes sense that a measure of cognitive ability would correlate with behavior in life that requires cognitive ability. Duh. I mean, like, that's not brilliant, although people make their careers on that. So, in my theory, analytical intelligence is a part of it. You need creative skills to come up with new, useful ideas. You need analytical skills to know if the ideas are good. You need practical skills to be able to implement your ideas and persuade others of their value. And you need wisdom-based skills to ensure that the ideas help to achieve a common good. So IQ is a small part of my theory. I've never said, and as you point out, that IQ is bad in itself. The bad is in the way people use it. It's not in the thing. It's like if you are looking for a romantic partner and you decide, I'm only going to look at one attribute only, how beautiful the girl is, or how handsome the guy is, or how much money they have, or how tall they are. I'm going to only look at one attribute. That would be a bad way of choosing a romantic partner, because they might be good looking but be a jerk, right? Or they might be rich, but they might be cold. So what I've said is, yeah, sure, IQ is one attribute that matters, but it doesn't tell you anything about creativity. And in today's world, the world is changing so fast. You have to be creative, or you get stuck like we did with COVID-19, in leaders saying, well, this is nothing new. We don't have to worry about this. Everything's going to be okay. God will take care of it, or nature will take care of it, or the virus will die on its own. We get, because they don't. It's new. They're not. They don't say we have a different situation here. It's not what we're used to. Although the Spanish flu, as it was once called, it's not that it's never happened before. So you need creativity because the world keeps changing. You need practical skills because there are a lot of people with high IQs who are practically ineffectual. They can't get along with other people. They can't talk to other people. They can't get anything done. They, like they have big heads or something. They can get into a high IQ society, but that's about what they can do. They're good for a high IQ society. And for showing pictures of themselves with their pin showing, I have a high IQ. And you need wisdom, because wisdom is about achieving a common good. It's not just for yourself. It's not just for people of your religion or your political party or your ideology or your skin color. It's about achieving a common good for everybody. And that's important in today's world. It has to be that way, because if we keep, look at the fight in Europe over the COVID vaccine. That ain't the way to go. So I don't think my views are too similar to the IQ people. I think that what they have to offer is a small part of what people need, but it's only a small part. And the trouble is that you can have a high IQ and be uncreative and have no common sense and no wisdom. And then you just really don't have that much to offer the world except your high IQ test score.
Yes, thank you. Next.
سوال بعدی رو بپرسم. Another topic that comes up when there's a conversation about intelligence is the heritability of IQ. That a lot of the traditional theories of intelligence do suggest that intelligence is a hereditary ability, and a lot of people also believe that too. How much do you agree with that, especially because it being genetic causes an issue that you have expressed disagreement with it at the basis, and that's intelligence being deterministic and not flexible after childhood?
Yeah. Well, almost everything about you has some heritable component, right? I mean, your hair color, your skin color, your height, your weight, uh, the diseases to which you're susceptible. So I've never argued that intelligence has no genetic component. Almost everything does. But that's different from deterministic. Height is heritable, highly heritable, but I'm taller than both my parents. Most people of my generation were taller than both of their parents. So there's a difference between heritability and modifiability. Something can be highly heritable, but also highly modifiable, as we found height is. That whole argument, I would have thought people would have gotten bored of it because of the Flynn effect. So we know that IQs increased 30 points in the 20th century. So, that pretty well tells us that an IQ is modifiable, at least in a secular sense. And we know that intelligence as measured by IQ is modifiable. It's associated with the number of years of schooling you have because it's academic skills. If you look at what's actually on an IQ test, it's the stuff you learn in school. That said, if so I would have hoped that people would have realized that this debate is a waste of time. And with epigenetics, I would have thought this debate would be totally gone, but people aren't creative. They build their career. I'll find out what percent of intelligence is heritable. Well, that's gone because of epigenetics. We know I have identical twin daughters. They're genetically identical. We have triplets. So the boy is a fraternal twin and the girls are identical. So genetically, the girls, no difference, but they're really different. They have different personalities. They look somewhat different. They are interested in different things. Anyone who's big into this heritability thing ought to have identical twins, and they'll see how different they are. And they'll realize, yeah, they have similar hair. They're both curly blonde, and they're the same height. And, you can see some similarities in them, sure. But we know from epigenetics that environment sort of activates and deactivates certain genes. So regardless of the genes you're born with, environmental influences are going to change the way those genes affect your behavior in your everyday life. So to still have this dumb argument really surprises me, given what we know about epigenetics. But the most important thing is that when I talk about adaptive intelligence, do you really believe that someone is born with the notion that I'm here to make the world a better place? No way. You're not born with that. You're born with some hardware, that you could decide I'm going to make the world a better place, or you could decide to become Dr. Evil, who was our last president of the United States, or I probably shouldn't have said that, or you can, decide I'm going to do nothing and just congratulate myself for having a high IQ, or I'm going to do nothing because I just don't care. The things that matter are the things that are the interaction between who you want to be and what you can do. So, the people who make a difference, it's not about how many IQ points. What's Greta Thunberg's IQ? The girl who's trying to change attention to the environment. What's her IQ? Who cares? What's Malala Yousafzai's IQ? Who cares? What was Nelson Mandela's IQ? Who cares? Or Martin Luther King? The people who changed the world. If people are asking your IQ, then you didn't do anything. What matters is whatever your cognitive skills, what do you do with them? Are you, we had a guy who wanted to turn us into a dictatorship. He was always bragging about his IQ. I doubt he has a very high IQ, but if he did, someone could use their high IQ to turn the country into a dictatorship. So, are we going to say, well, congratulations, sir, you have a really high IQ? I mean, he messes up the lives. And this still may happen. It may happen, 3.5 years from now. We may become the next dictatorship. I don't know. I think that I think they're looking at the wrong stuff. You know why they're looking at the wrong stuff? Because it's like, that's why creativity is so important. They're entrenched. That's what we've always done. We've always measured IQ. We can measure it. We can get another publication. We can get hired by a university, or we can get a job in some corporation, or we can get a couple publications so we can buy a house and raise our kids. And it's just, to me, it's maddening that we're stuck on this crap when the world is falling apart. I mean, we don't need this. Do we really need more people to go to prestigious schools, to have bigger houses and bigger cars and nicer lawns? Or do we need people who are going to say the world is falling apart and we really better do something? Let's think about what we can do to stop people dying of COVID-19. Let's not leave them in care homes for the old where the COVID is ravaging the whole home. I mean, is that about IQ, or is that about common sense and about caring about someone beside yourself?
Yes, thank you. سوال بعدی رو بپرس. سوال بعدی رو بپرس.
Yeah. سوال ده.
صدات قطعه.
الان هست صدا.
بله.
There are studies that show that there is a relationship, maybe a correlation or causation between IQ in childhood and things like educational achievement or career achievement. There's a direct relation between them. You've said that early childhood IQs do not predict anything accurately. By around the age of 8, when IQ becomes stable, you are predicting about 50% of the variation in adult IQ. So,
yeah. Well, first of all, the measures of habituation and dishabituation that are used for infants do predict IQ at age 8, and they'll probably have some prediction to adulthood. But again, we could keep discussing it. I just think it's the wrong question. I'm with my kids when we take a walk every morning. So, there's certain things they have to learn. Sometimes I quiz them on math facts through 10, the triplets. The 2 other kids are older. But what we were talking about yesterday is standing up for what you believe. That if, we were talking about what's going on in this country, that almost half the country believes lies. And they have an ex-president who lies all the time, shamelessly, and without any evidence they believe him. So am I going to worry more about their IQ, or whether they're going to be someone who's a yes man, who, when you get a guy like that who lies all the time, who is narcissistic, only cares about himself, who's corrupt, who's a criminal, and managed to get himself elected president, at least that's my view. I'm much more concerned that they don't become like that they don't become a follower of someone who's a terrible role model. And just, yes. I mean, we have smart people in IQ sense in Congress who are selling themselves out right now, today. People with high IQs, they're selling themselves out. They're lying through their teeth. They know they're lying through their teeth. If there's a hell, they're going to go to hell when they die. And they don't care. And so I'm going to worry about their IQ. I don't want them to become like, our congresswoman in New York who wants to be the next number 2 or number 3 in Congress, who has no sense of ethics, no sense of morals, who will sell herself out to get a more powerful position. I'm much more worried about that. I'm sure she has a high IQ because she's manipulating things to replace Liz Cheney.
You're talking about Elise Stefanik?
Yeah, I didn't want to mention the name.
Yeah,
I'm trying not to mention names today. Um,
sorry.
but, should we worry about IQ, which is a narrow sense of intelligence, or should we worry about people who whose adaptive intelligence is, is negative because they're only looking out for themselves? And to me, that's what we should be worried about. Intelligence in the sense uh, of adaptive intelligence, of trying to make a positive, meaningful, and enduring difference to the world. That's what I want for my kids. And I've studied intelligence my whole life. So when they have to take tests for college admissions, if they have to take tests, I'll have them get some books to study for those tests. But if we're going to select our leaders for their test scores, then what we're going to end up with is people who are better, at doing problems that are unrelated to real world problems. Real world problems aren't like IQ test problems. Real world problems, it's hard to figure out what they are. It's hard to figure out how to solve them. They have no unique answer. The problems change through time. They're emotionally involving. They have high stakes. The kinds of people who are good at trivial problems, do you want those as leaders? They're really good at solving trivial problems. Do you want those dealing with problems like COVID-19 and nuclear weapons? They don't know how to deal with them. And why is that surprising? They're good at solving trivial crap problems that have no bearing on the world. But sure, the ability to solve those problems will correlate at a low level with lots of things because you need those skills in your life. So I'm not arguing that IQ is worthless. I don't think that. I think it's a small part of what matters.
Yes. سوال 12 بپرس.
یا ضرورت کنم.
بعدم بپرس. سوال 12 بپرس.
In recent years, there's been the concept of emotional quotients, EQ, has been widely discussed in Iran. It was, of course, brought up by Daniel Goldman. A lot of psychologists in the world disagree with putting intelligence next to emotion and believe that these two can't really be mixed together and seen as the same thing, especially because Goldman, who brought up this idea, is not a psychologist, and his very his bestseller book has a very popular and pulp literature to it. What do you think about the concept of EQ?
Well, first of all, it wasn't his idea. He took the idea from Jack Mayer and Peter Salovey. So he gets the credit, but it wasn't his idea. He's a popularizer. So this is a case where the popularizer sometimes gets credit for an idea that isn't his. I don't think he ever claimed it was his, but he was high in practical intelligence, right? He knew how to sell the idea to people. In terms of whether it's a good idea, I, you know, emotional intelligence seems to have some construct validity. What I think is good about it is it makes the point that there's more to intelligence than just IQ. So, in my handbook of intelligence, which just came out, I I think it's published in 2020. It's the Cambridge Handbook of Intelligence. There's a chapter on emotional intelligence. There's a chapter on practical intelligence. There's a chapter on leadership intelligence. There's a chapter on social intelligence. There's a chapter on multiple intelligences, on successful intelligence. And I think the point is not really about, is each of these a perfect construct? None of them are. But that when we think about intelligence as adaptation, we need to think more broadly than IQ. In the case of emotional intelligence, yeah, I mean, there's something to that. I mean, people can, I know a guy who was vice president of a company and he wasn't chosen for CEO. And he had an emotional outburst. And as a result of that emotional outburst, he not only didn't get the promotion, he lost the job he had. We all know how emotional outbursts at the wrong time can really be damaging. Take our present governor. I mean, he's had some emotional issues in New York. Uh, you know, Control of your emotions, control of your social behavior. If you're a leader, being a constructive leader, I just think that I don't really quite agree with Howard Gardner's theory. I mean, I've written that many times, but what he did that was good, what all these people have done that's good is they've said there's more than just narrow cognitive ability. The details we're all going to get wrong. I mean, it'll be for the future to sort those out. But we really got to get away from the notion that, the people who are the best academic problem solvers are the ones who are going to save the world. They're going to save themselves.
Yes, thank
Why is it that psychology, on a very important topic like intelligence, on a very important component like intelligence, the field of psychology cannot provide a uniform definition?
Well, there's not much it can provide a uniform definition to. I mean, what is love? What is hate? What is anger? What is exactly empathy? All of these constructs have approximate definitions. They're prototype definitions, but it's hard to specify the necessary and sufficient features for them. So, I think the problem is not that we can't define them. It's that people with a high need for certainty and order and systematization accept a definition that doesn't work anymore. They're using a definition that may have made sense in 1905 or 1904 when Spearman did his work for predicting aspects of school achievement, but they get entrenched. And instead of saying, it's like the analogy I've given, it's supposed that medical testing today were the same as medical testing in 1904 and 1905. We were using medical tests from then. Think about where we would be in treating cancer or heart disease or diabetes or COVID-19 or tuberculosis. We'd be in horrible shape. In medical testing, there's competition and there's innovation. In psychological testing, we're still doing the same stuff we did in more than 100 years ago. I mean, doesn't that suggest something's wrong? People are proud of that? They're proud of the fact. I mean, that's what, who's this field attracting? It's attracting people who want to keep doing what we did more than 100 years ago. Would you want a car from 1905? I mean, imagine how much you could go like 20 miles per hour and, with an open top, and it would hold a few gallons of gas, and you'd be really it's like we're driving this really old, antiquated car and doing so with pride because this is what a car is. Of course, things change with time. They should change with time. We should get a better, we don't even really know what space-time is. Like what's dark matter? What's dark energy? These are just constructs that have names that we don't really understand. That's the way science is. And the people who need the certainty and they're dogmatic and they have to have something to hold on to, and supposedly in the name of science, I think they prevent us from innovating and saying, what worked in 1904 doesn't necessarily work in 2021, and it sure isn't working. Look at where the world is today.
Yes, thank you. آقای نخعی، فقط اولش رو عذرخواهی کن که یه کمی طولانی شده. بعد سال 15 اینجوری بپرس که چه ارتباطی بین مفاهیم هوش و خرد وجود داره. از این مزد که آیا خردمندان رو میشه با هوش تطبیقی نامید؟
I have to apologize that this is taking so long, but like I said, we have a lot of questions. We have.
I should be good till 10:30 my time. I have another meeting at 11, so maybe 13 more minutes. Would that work?
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay.
توی نیم ساعت دیگه آقای ملکی باید جمع کنیم.
About 15 minutes.
Okay, okay.
Um, what's the relationship between the concepts of intelligence and wisdom? In other words, can we say wise people are adaptively intelligent, as you define it?
These days, I view wisdom as part of adaptive intelligence. Wisdom characterizes sort of where the end goal of adaptive intelligence, which is using your abilities and your knowledge for a common good by balancing your own interests with other people's interests with larger interests over the long term as well as the short term through the infusion of positive ethical values. So you can be IQ smart without being wise at all. But to be wise, you have to have at least some IQ because part of wisdom is analyzing what are feasible courses of action versus not.
Yes, thank you. سال 16 این فقط مفهوم هوش با هر تعریفی.
Bringing the concept of intelligence with whatever definition, bringing it to the field, to the area, to the realm of solving day-to-day problems, doesn't that sort of promote this idea that anybody who's unsuccessful must not be smart, and anybody who is successful must be also smart? Because a lot of people experience failure in life for reasons that they don't really have much control over it, like the distribution of wealth in the society, in the capitalist society, or the domino of poverty between poor people.
Yeah. What I have said in my work on successful intelligence, which has been sort of incorporated and adapted, it's about making the most of the life you're given. So there's some things you can't help. I was once in slums in India, and I commented to my colleague that, if you're born here, there's almost nothing you can do to get out of these slums. So the environment really does matter. And the point you're making is so important because some people just never have the chance, no matter what they do. So it's how can I optimize on my outcomes, doing the best I can within the context of my environment. I've always said that the environment places restrictions on what you can do, but in the theory, you can adapt to, shape, and select environments to some degree. You can't always, but you can change yourself to fit the environment. You can modify the environment somewhat, and sometimes you can select another environment. So you can't always. In some countries, you can't leave the country or you can't get out of poverty. It's very hard in the United States today to get out of poverty. It's making the most of what you can possibly do with the resources you have.
Yes, thank you. سال بعدی
17 بپرسم. There are schools in Iran who are called, commonly referred to as schools for small people. The official title is exceptional talents, schools for exceptional talents. A lot of students take tests as so they can be qualified to go into these schools. There's a lot of stress to get into these schools, and statistics shows that these students have higher chance of getting into higher universities and higher fields. And there's also other schools who are gaining ground, who, unlike these schools, focus more on practical skills and psychological skills, including relational skills. which looks like these schools are actually doing things more in accordance with what you promote. But a lot of parents still believe that educational success, the way that happens as a result of being in the smartest schools, so to speak, exceptional talent schools, is the thing that builds the future of career and social status of their children. What would you say to those parents?
Well, to some extent, I don't know Iran very well. It's exactly the same here. What I've said here, and I just gave a talk on this like a couple days ago. The title of the talk is Time Bomb. The problem with our views of intelligence is not any one particular person. It's not testing companies. It's not schools. It's everybody. It's a system. And what happens, the predictive value of these schools is invented. So when you get a correlation between early and later success, some people think, well, that shows that it's causal, that the IQ is causal of later success. That's crap. What happens is you give people who have more of a trait you value more opportunities. So if you value IQ, you give them more opportunities. You give them the chance to go to better schools. You give them better instruction. You give them better teachers. Then you give them admission to better universities. Then they get more resources. So what happens is you manufacture that correlation, and then you think it's causal. We actually showed in our studies in rural Kenya that you can get a negative correlation between academic skills and practical success if you're in a situation where you don't value traditional schooling and you actually think traditional schooling is a waste of time. The correlation is invented. It's not nature at work. It's society giving more opportunities in large part to the kids who do better on those tests. So the parents may be right because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. They create a society. The parents who have resources understandably want to make sure their kids have resources. So they do whatever they think needs to be done to get their kids resources. So they send them to those schools. Then in turn, the schools need the money, and those are the parents who tend to have the money or whatever it is. And so, if you look at the top schools in the United States, they're mostly rich kids. I mean, at Harvard, Yale, Cornell, most of the kids there come very wealthy families because the universities, they need some people who can pay full tuition, and then they'll have a few scholarships so they could say they're diverse. So it becomes a self-perpetuating system with self-fulfilling prophecies. So the parents may be right because if enough people believe that, it becomes true. But that doesn't mean it's a good system. It just means that crappy systems can last forever. For example, we have a fairly crappy system in the United States where it may be possible I know you wouldn't have anything like this in Iran. I mean, it's only the United States, where a small minority may take over the country in 3.5 years. Between the Electoral College and state legislatures being able to jigger things up, we may be taken over by people who pretend to be, the real Americans. So we may be controlled by the small minority of fake Christians who live in the South. I probably shouldn't say that in an interview, but that may happen. That doesn't mean it's a good system. It just means that once people get in power, they do everything they can to stay in power. And it may be because sometimes it's because of their skin color. Sometimes it's because of their religion. Sometimes it's because of their good looks or their wealth. But whoever's in power tries to keep there. And so, if you only accepted tall people to the very best universities in Iran, then you would find that the people running things are tall. And you would say that being tall causes people to be successful. And so what we want to do is buy elevator shoes, shoes that raise your height, in hope that nobody notices you're wearing elevator shoes. But these self-fulfilling prophecies and self-perpetuating systems don't tell you anything other than that people in power want to stay there. But as I say, you wouldn't have that in Iran. That's only a problem in the United States.
Yes, thanks. سال 18
آقای ملک میان خیلی وقت نداریم، ما نمیخواید بپری از رو سوالا.
نه.
Okay. Um, from what we've read, you didn't have a good relationship with tests in your own childhood, and you were suffering from test anxiety. How much did this experience affect your tendency to go towards psychology and your approach in that?
Well, very much. I went into this whole intelligence business originally because I did poorly on tests. I became interested in intelligence in elementary school because I sort of flunked the IQ test. But the interesting thing is that once I got over the test anxiety, I did very well in tests. And then I said, well, how is it possible for a guy who was so bad in testing that he sent him back to a lower grade to take the test in high school to be doing really well in it? I mean, I'm the same guy. And so if the tests can at one point say I'm dumb as a log, and another point they say, "Oh, this guy's really smart," there's got to be something wrong there, right? So what I've been trying to do is figure out what's wrong and how we can make it better. And I haven't succeeded. I mean, like, regrettably, I'm 71 and almost, if anything, things have gotten worse. It's depressing to get older and realize you've spent your career trying to change something and have gotten absolutely nowhere. That's why you should have kids, because at least then you have the kids to hope that they'll be able to change things even though you didn't. And students.
اوکی. دو تا بگو که دو تا سال دیگه مونده فعلا. سال 19 و بعدش هم 20 رو بپرس.
Please. Okay. And a student that hears from his professor in psychology at the very introductory phases of his study that because of low grades, it's better that he changes his field. How can that student become one of the most important and influential psychologists in the world? Was that your high adaptive intelligence?
Well, I actually originally did give up. I decided to major in math, and I was worse in math than I was in psychology, so I went back to psychology. The main thing I tell my students and my kids is if you really believe something, then you don't give up. You just keep going. In when I study creativity, and the people who are creative, if you were to say what is a distinguishing characteristics, it's that they get punched in the face, but they keep going. And I've had a lot of punches at various points in my career. I mean, really a lot of them. Sometimes I just do feel like giving up, and I've come pretty close. But to really be creative, positively creative, I'm sort of doing work now on positive creativity. To be positively creative and make a difference. Everyone has bad things happen in their life. Their parents die, they get sick, their relationships fail, they lose money, they have an accident, their kids get sick, sometimes their kids die. We lost 2 kids. I mean, things go really horribly wrong. And the people who really make a difference, or at least try to, are the ones who don't give up, if they believe in what they're trying to achieve. And I think the main problem is not about IQ, it's about resilience. It's keeping going in the face of events where sometimes you say, I sometimes say to my wife, I just like to move to, I'm serious about this, some obscure town in northern Vermont where no one knows where we are. No one can reach us. We're told, and I actually almost wanted to buy a house in northern Vermont. It was just sold yesterday. I mean, like, my wife does not share this fantasy, but sometimes I just want to escape. But you have to keep going, and it's just so important if you really believe in what you're doing.
Yes, thank you. And final
سوال
question.
The last thing, there's one other thing I want to say, since I said I study creativity, because I know we're running out of time. I think that another thing that's really important in the world today is creativity, and creativity is about defying the crowd, defying yourself, and defying the zeitgeist or the worldview. It's really hard to be creative, not because of genes and not because of IQ and not because of what school you went to. It's really hard to be creative because people are so opposed to it. And they may not think they're opposed to it, but they are. Uh, as soon as, they like creativity in principle, unless it threatens them. And if it threatens them, then they're very quick to go after you. And it may threaten their power, it may threaten their money, it may threaten their job. And I think another piece of advice for your students is if you're not creative, creativity is mostly an attitude toward life. It's not about something you're born with. It's about, are you willing to be defiant of the crowd, of what other people are saying and pretending they believe just to get along? Are you willing to defy yourself and say, look, I've been wrong, I'm willing to move on? And are you willing to defy societies, which always have a lot of stupid beliefs that they don't want to give up on? So I just wanted to mention that, because I think we're in a time in our country, at least, and in the world, where lack of creativity is a really big problem. That, we have all these people in the United States who are bowing to this fascist would-be dictator who's just a narcissist. I mean, it's horrible. I mean, I never thought, and then you wonder how Hitler came into power. It could happen here. Sinclair Lewis recognized that when he wrote a book, It Can't Happen Here. It could happen here very soon. And it may happen here because people are such sellouts. And so if your readers really want to make a difference, you have to fight for that difference. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but you keep going. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sternberg. I'm happy for this interview. John,
we have one last question.
Okay.
Last
question.
Last question. In recent years, psychology has become a very popular field for people entering into universities in Iran. As a prominent veteran of this field, what would be your advice to the newcomers so that they could reach the peaks of this field of science?
Well, I don't know anything about reaching the peaks because I sure never did. But I think you have to figure out what you really care about. That's what matters. I always study things I really care about. I never did what other people told me to do. No, I did once in graduate school, and I really regretted it. Once in graduate school, I did what my advisor told me to do, and it was a total waste of time. You have to, like what I do is I study things I'm bad at. I studied intelligence because I did badly on IQ tests. I studied creativity because once I ran out of ideas. I studied love when I was in a failing relationship. I studied wisdom because I gave it bad advice. I studied leadership because I'm not a natural leader. So my way of figuring out what I'm passionate about is things that I kind of suck at, as we would say in New York. And you have to figure out not what your advisor tells you, not what your parents tell you, not what the textbook tells you. What do you really care about? And how are you going to make a difference to whatever that is? So that's the main advice I give. Figure out what you're passionate about and how you're going to make a difference. And you must be doing something right, because I have 3 Iranian collaborators who are all doing great, at least in the United States. So something's going right there. But I think that's what I think they've done. Figure out who you are, what your contribution is, and then go ahead and make it. And don't worry too much about what everyone else did. Everyone's always told me I'm doing the wrong thing, and it's being true to yourself.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sternberg. I'm happy for this interview. Thank you.
Thank you. We kind of ran out of time for you to tell me about life in Iran, but maybe some time I've run out. Yes.
You have my information in Skype, and I will have my colleague give you my email anytime that you want to ask any question. I'm a journalist. It's literally my job. So I would, of course, it would be my honor if you have any question about Iran. If I can
Okay,
help
that's
you.
super. I will do that. Yeah, send me your email. And if you send me your email, I'll send you the papers I said I'd send.
Yes, yes.
Okay?
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
See. Bye.
Bye.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.